Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So today I have a very interesting guest who's going to talk about a new strategic raw material. You've heard of it, but you didn't know how important it really is becoming, graphite. He's the CEO of Northern Graphite, Hugues Jacquemin. Hugues, welcome to the channel. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Great, Hugues. Thank you for coming again. And maybe you could tell the viewers a little bit about your background and about the company.
Sure. I'm a Belgian guy, and I've spent most of my career in specialty materials. I'm an engineer by background, and my passion has always been to use specialty materials to improve the energy transition, whether it was a composite material to lighten vehicles and so on, or whether it was a conductive material like the graphite to facilitate the development of the electrification around the world and being a big part of the energy transition. Northern Graphite is a listed company in Toronto, and we are today the only producer of graphite in North America. In fact, we have been producing the material for more than 30 years. Graphite, as you said, is a very interesting material. What's very interesting about graphite is that it is not widely available, but it has wonderful properties. And the properties of the graphite are really brought to life by this hexagonal shape that you see on the screen, which is basically made up of 6 atoms of carbon. And those 6 atoms of carbon in that hexagonal shape, when they're connected together, they bring a huge amount of electrical and thermal conductivity, as well as very strong bonds. And so, the graphite will play a role really as a metal replacement for copper and other metals by bringing, a very high level of conductivity, both electrical and thermal, but doing it in a manner that it's much lighter than any of the traditional metals like copper. So for example, if you look at copper and the conductivity of the material, graphite has pretty much the same level of conductivity, but it's 5 times lighter. So you can use 1/5 of the weight of the material to achieve the same result.
I see. And I wanted to talk about something that I heard just over a month ago pertaining to China. And the headline at the time was Western graphite producers shares soar after Beijing announces export curbs. This came out like towards the end of October, and I have looked at the share price of the major graphite producers like your company and others, and they spiked higher, and now they've come back down a little bit. They've corrected. So here on the channel, we focus a lot on precious metals, but in the last 4 years, we've looked a lot at commodities because being a finance guy originally, I think the age of financialization that we had since interest rates stopped in 1981 up until a couple of years ago is kind of waning, and we're going to have especially in the West, expand into other sectors other than just finance, into real things. And that's why I thought it was interesting to talk to you about this, because I think graphite fits the bill. It's something that is under the radar. So, and also with the BRICS and the supply chain situation becoming more and more difficult, I would say, with de-dollarization. Maybe you could tell us how your company will be able to exploit this opportunity that I see, and I think a lot of my viewers see as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Northern Graphite, we're all about growth, and we're all about using graphite as a facilitator for that growth, because the demand for graphite is going to explode. if you think of just the lithium-ion battery space, half of a battery is basically graphite. It's the anode. So the material that you see in the battery, the graphite material that is used in the battery basically stores the lithium ions that are being used to produce the power that the battery will produce. And so you can't have a lithium-ion battery if you don't have graphite. But graphite is also used in a lot of other industries. So, for example, most of the graphite plates that are used in hydrogen fuel cells are made up of graphite. Graphite is also used in a lot of your cell phones today, a lot of the high definition TVs, any of the electronics that generates a lot of heat will use graphite as a conductor to drive that heat out of the electronics and make sure they perform. And so, that market so far has really been driven by China. And today, 99% of the graphite that goes into lithium-ion batteries is produced by China. And as you said, on October 20th, China made this announcement that they are going to basically control the export of graphite because there's not enough to go around and they need it for their own growth and development, and they don't want the rest of the world to limit their growth by using some of this very precious material which is out there. So as Northern Graphite, we're the only producer in North America and have been for the last 30 years. We have a brand new asset that we want to bring to life in Ontario. We've been working on that asset for about 18 years now. It's basically shovel ready. And so as soon as we can get it financed, we can build that up, and that will bring another 100,000 tons of capacity over time. And then we also have a third asset in Namibia, which we acquired at the same time as we acquired the asset in Quebec from Imerys. And that asset will be back in production at the beginning of 2025. And it has enough graphite in the ground and enough room to be able to be multiplied fourfold over the next 3 to 4 years. So, we have the capacity, we have the market, we have the application. And so for us, it's really about execution and getting investors interested in the company so that we can finance a lot of these projects. The governments, whether Canadian or US, are both very committed to helping us being successful. And there are a lot of programs. One of them just got announced last week in Canada to finance these critical minerals and their development. And we fall right into the area that will be able to apply for those type of grants. So, we have a team of about 100 people today. And we have a lot of expertise. I've been in the graphite industry myself for the last 10 years. So we all are very experienced and have the skills that are necessary to bring these projects forward and to develop the company to take full advantage of this electrification movement, whether it's a battery or a fuel cell or cell phone or a solar panel or a wind blade. We can participate with our graphite. And so our job, is to execute on our plans. And we're very well positioned to do that.
How come there's so little investment in graphite, let's say in North America, seeing that you are the only graphite company in North America? Is that because the Chinese, do you think they'll be able to keep control of graphite prices, or that's going to not be the case going forward?
Yeah, up until not very long ago, whenever a graphite project was being put on the market, and what would happen is that the price of graphite would fall, and the Chinese would basically dump product in the market to make sure that the projects weren't economical and would not provide the adequate return to the investors. So the reason why we have survived so long is we really play in the high end of the market. The graphite we produce in Canada is of very high quality, and we are very close to some of our big customers in the US. We sell most of what we produce today in the US, and we get about double the price than the Chinese get for their materials. But all of this really started changing a couple of years ago, especially when the US announced this IRA regulation. It basically tells the OEM that if they want to get support from the government in order to pay the end user a $7,500 rebate, they're going to have a high percentage of the minerals and the materials that they use in the battery, which are sourced either in the US or from a country that has a free trade agreement with the US. And so that really positioned us in an amazing position because we are producing today, we have the capacity to grow. All of our three mines would meet the IRA requirement because even Namibia is part of AGOA, which is a country which is an agreement with some African countries that provides for this free trade. And therefore, we can now really participate. And what's happening is that, China is kind of on an island now because the IRA is pretty specific and it says it doesn't want entities of concerns to be part of the supply chain of the minerals that go into the battery in order to get this IRA incentive. And therefore, the value of the minerals that are produced in a country that has a free trade agreement with the US, like Canada or Namibia, it has basically increased multiple fold. And so now it becomes viable, it now becomes economical to expand capacity and meet the future demand, which is coming down the pipeline. And it's going to be huge. The market for graphite in the US until the IRA and until lithium-ion batteries really became something to talk about is about 100,000 tons a year. So, with our mine in Canada producing 15,000 tons a year, we had enough capacity to get a 15% market share. And it was very difficult for us to do more than that because every time we tried, basically China would come in and cut the price. But this is no longer the case. The customers are now willing to pay more. In fact, our average selling price for our graphite is about 1,500 a ton. And you can see on this chart, how that has increased over the last few years. And so it becomes now a lot more, let's say, a lot easier to attract investors. But we have to spread the word, which is why we are on this call with you today, is really to talk about what we can do and what a fantastic opportunity for investors this company is and this industry is as a whole.
Yeah, because I see that your market cap is relatively small, 28 million right now, isn't it? Canadian dollars?
Yeah, I mean, when we did the acquisition, we financed the transaction with quite a large private placement of 24 million. And at the time, we did it at 75 cents. So, the share price of the company has basically gone up all the way up to 90 cents and then gone back down to 22, like most of the resource stocks have done in the last few months. But it's also fair to say that, at some point, the price of the shares of Northern Graphite back in 2012, they hit a high at about $4 or even above that. And the reason it did is because basically the Chinese started to control the export of graphite, and suddenly, the price of the resources went up significantly because people were expecting that to be a big success. And I sure hope the price will go back up to that level again. We will see, but what's been announced on October 20th is definitely something to take into consideration because the Chinese are not going to be exporting their material. In fact, last week I was at a conference in Quebec, and one of my competitors, who is also developing a graphite mine in Quebec, he shared some information with a group where a battery manufacturer in the US was buying material from a large graphite supplier in China. And as of December 1st, this company was unable to get a license from the government to export their material. So, those controls that are being put in place are very real. So it's only a question of time for us to see, a higher price for graphite, and a higher price will make it more attractive for investment. And if it's more attractive for investment, the capacities will be developed. And we see a very bright future for our company moving forward.
Yeah, I also saw that a few months ago, the Chinese put some export controls on rare earth metals. So they seem to be doing that for a lot of their raw materials. Could you tell us a little bit about the prospects for your company of not just producing a lot of graphite, but expanding into other into the finished products in the graphite business?
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. As a company, we are really focusing in developing what we would call downstream opportunities for our products. So today, most of the graphite we produce in Canada, we ship to companies that then transform that material into a finished product, as you say. And so, in order for us to invest downstream, we've done a couple of things. The first thing is we've partnered with some companies on the battery side to develop the technology we need to take our flakes from the mine and put them into a battery. And there is some processing to be done there because the flakes have to have the right size, the right shape. They need to be purified and they need to be protected with a coating. And those materials, when they go into a battery, they're called battery anode material, or BAM. Okay. So the first thing we're doing is we're partnering with companies to build a big BAM plant up in northern Quebec so that we can transform our flakes coming from the mine into BAM. And that's the first step. And if we do that, rather than selling the material for $1,500 a ton, we can sell the material for $10,000 a ton. So there's a huge added value to doing that. And that's what most of the graphite companies are wanting to do and are aspiring to do. I think where we differ from most people is we're actually doing it today because our partners are making the material. We're testing it. We put some press releases out there to show what the performance of that material is, and it's very close to some of the commercially available grades in Japan today. And so for us, the BAM is definitely a big step. But not only are we looking to invest downstream for the BAM, we've also looking to invest downstream in other applications. And so we basically signed an agreement with one of our customers called Neograph. They're out of Cleveland, Ohio. And our intent is to acquire 33% of the company with the ability to increase that percentage ownership over time. And basically, this company, Neograph, what they do is they take our flakes and they intercalate the flakes, they expand them, and they produce foils and graphene-type materials from our flakes. And they go after applications like the fuel cell that we talked about, the cell phones that we talked about, but also the outside of the battery, because these batteries generate a lot of heat. So they need sensors to be able to be managed very effectively. And so this company produces that as well. We're also working very closely with some of our refractory customers to really understand what their needs are and trying to understand the application in more detail to see how we can help them better. We're also looking at some ways for us to purify our flakes, because in some application, that's a requirement in order to be able to compete with some of these other metals. And so we're also investing in that field and finding, new and innovative ways for us to purify the material. And all these materials, they sell for multiple times the value of the flake because of the properties that they offer, as a finished or a semi-finished good.
Yeah, and could you talk a little bit about the shareholder structure of your company? I think you don't have like a huge shareholder. It's quite balanced, right? And how many shares?
Actually, we have more than 10,000 shareholders today. A lot of them are retail shareholders, and a lot of them have been with us for a long time because the company was founded in 2002. And so, we have a large shareholder base. Most of it is in Canada and in US, although most of them are in Canada. And basically, we have 130 million shares outstanding. So at a share price of 22 cents, which is what it is today, the market cap is, as you said, 30 million. But if you look at the share price at 75 cents, which is when we did the private placement, the market cap of the company is almost 100 million. So the market cap of a company can change very quickly. What's interesting about Northern Graphite is that the assets we have, the production assets we actually have in production today, they actually have a lot of value because they're in the ground, they're fully permitted, and all our resources are well measured and reported with 43101s, and so and a lot of them already have permits for future development. So if you were to have to replace the value of those assets, it'll be several hundred millions of dollars. So there's a real gap versus our market cap and the value of the assets that we have. And so what we have to do as a company is we have to continue to develop our company. We generate cash today through our production in Lac des Îles, but we don't generate enough cash to support all of the efforts that we have ongoing. So we have to expand. We have to get Namibia up and running. We have to extend the life of a mine in Lac des Îles. And once we do that, and we generate, tens of millions of cash every year, then it will put us in a much better position to be able to move forward. And that's what we're working on. And our prospects for the future of our share price are very good. So we're quite excited about the value that we can bring towards our shareholders and the people who invest in the company.
One more question: the expansion in Namibia and all the work you're going to put in, all the capital you're going to spend. Have you got the cash to do that, or are you looking to raise more capital? How are you going to go about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking to raise more money. We're looking to do it in a non-dilutive way. So we are really focusing more on debt than equity to finance the company. I mean, as I said, we have a lot of assets. So how can we use those assets effectively to use debt rather than equity? Because right now at this share price, it would be very dilutive.
Yeah. Great. So before we wrap up, could you tell the viewers where they can, if they're interested in looking into Northern Graphite, where they can find information, and maybe also where they would be able to buy the stock, which exchange, and the ticker?
Yeah, so the stock itself is on the TSX-V. The ticker is NGC. It's also available on the OTC. That's the two main exchanges where the stock is being traded. We do have something in Frankfurt and in Stuttgart as well, but most of the trades are happening on the TSX and the OTC. If you're looking for information on Northern Graphite, the best place to go is on our website, northerngraphite.com. And there you will find all the information that you may require, both on the product side, but also for investors. Our corporate presentation is available, as you've been showing on the screen. There's a lot of videos, interviews that have done over the last 12 to 18 months. There's also a lot of information about graphite itself, what the perspectives are, some pictures on our site in Namibia, in Quebec, in Ontario. So, there's a lot of information on our website, but we're also present on all of the social media channels, including Discord, Reddit, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, or X, as we say now. We also have a very good YouTube channel that people can access with a lot of the films that are being produced. And then, personally, I'm very active on LinkedIn. I usually accept a connection request if someone wants to connect. And if you have any questions, please feel free to write to info@northerngraphite.com. It's an email address which is always responded to. And I think that's pretty much it.
Great. And let's hope that graphite becomes more divulged, because when you hear about all these metals and raw materials they're going to need for the electric expansion, you never hear about graphite. So hopefully this will help. And thank you for coming on my channel. And yes, maybe we can talk again another time.
Absolutely. And remember, graphite is a non-metal that behaves like a metal. That's what makes it so interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's the only, apart from diamonds, the only natural form of carbon, right?
Correct. The only difference between a diamond and graphite is the amount of pressure and heat that was applied at the time the deposit was formed. It was
Great.
very close to diamond.
All right. Thank you very much, Hugues, and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.